Okay, I see participants are joining in. Welcome in, everyone. It's wonderful to see you guys, and it's wonderful to welcome you to a really incredible session that we're going to have today. My name is Roman Sharmata. I'm a founding rector of American University Kyiv. And first of all, I want to thank many of our participants who have registered today for this masterclass. I understand that some of you cannot attend due to the electricity outage. And as you know, Russia has been heavily shelling Ukrainians' power plants and other critical infrastructure last several weeks. And in many Ukrainian cities, there is a blackout, and the electricity is being supplied to the households in shifts. So for those who cannot attend, this session will be recorded and will be available for further review. Now, of course, your security is very vital to us, and if you hear the air raid alarm, so please do not ignore it, proceed to the shelter and remain until further guidance from the official sources. Now, let me give you a few words about the AUK launch. AUK has opened its first year with the first cohort of students in the middle of the war, and despite all of the challenges related to that, we have launched 3 groups in master's programs and 2 groups in bachelor's programs. AUK has also launched the lifelong learning programs, and global leadership is already running in the 3rd module, and the behavioral economics will start next month. So we are full speed. I think what we are doing is really incredible. It will be written in the history of Ukrainian books, especially when we talk about the victor and the fact that American University was open during the time of war in Ukraine. Also, let me have you a few words about the connection between AUK and Arizona State University. So AUK is powered by ASU, which means that American University Kyiv and Arizona State University are working together to do something transformational to offer the American education, the best in the world education, and the American learning experience in Ukraine. Through this partnership, AUK supports pathways for dual degrees, accelerated master's degrees, certificates, and innovative immersion programs. Therefore, it is possible to graduate with 2 internationally recognized degrees, both from Ukraine and from the United States. And so it is our honor and pleasure to have 2 outstanding representatives of ASU faculty delivering a master class, which is called Character-Driven Leadership. Character-Driven Leadership. Let me introduce our speakers. We have Ambassador Michael Polt. He's an experienced American diplomat. He served as a U.S. ambassador to Serbia and Montenegro from 2004 to 2007, and later as the U.S. ambassador to Estonia from 2009 to 2012. By the way, the Estonia, by today's announcement, has been the biggest provider of military support to Ukraine per capita in terms of their national defense. They gave to Ukraine almost half of their national defense budget in the past 8 months. After his 35-year diplomatic career, he took position as a senior director at the McCain Institute for the International Relationship. In 2020, Ambassador Polt assumed his position as ASU Ambassador in Residence in Leadership, Diplomacy, and National Security Lab. So, Ambassador, welcome. Also, we have Benjamin Freakley, who is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General. During his 36-year-long military service, he has taken part in multiple operations, including Operations Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. After leaving his active duty military service in 2012, General Freakley joined the McCain Institute and Arizona State University. He now serves as the professor of practice of leadership for Arizona State University and a special advisor to ASU President Michael Crow for leadership initiatives. Additionally, he is a co-founder of the AUC Leadership Diplomacy and National Security Lab. So welcome, General. It is wonderful to see you both again. And thank you so much that you have joined us and that you again doing this masterclass. I believe all our listeners will be very impressed by your knowledge, by your expertise, and I'm looking forward to it as well. Welcome.
Roman, thank you. And we would also like for Nikki to introduce herself. She's a great teammate of the lab and a recent graduate of Arizona State University and holds a master's degree. Nikki, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you here today. As General Franklin mentioned, I'm a program coordinator with the Leadership, Diplomacy, and National Security Lab, and was also very lucky to be a student of theirs back when I was an undergrad at Arizona State University. So I've heard this presentation that you're about to witness, and you're in for a real treat. It's great to be learning from these accomplished leaders. And I'll just mention briefly that during this presentation, if you have any questions, we wanted this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to mention your questions down in the chat box, and we'll try to take those as we can.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay, General, I think we're ready to go.
Wonderful.
Well, first, I'd like to just thank you all for including us in this discussion. Roman, thank you for your leadership of the American University in Kyiv. I've just, as a soldier who's been in combat 3 times, as a son of a man who fought in the Second World War, I just want to say how much we admire the strength, courage, valor, and persistency of the people of Ukraine against this illegal and horrible invasion of your home country. We stand with you. We want you to know that. We pray that you're going to be victorious. We know you're going to be victorious. I so admire your military members and what they're getting done. It's terrific. And I think it's wonderful that in a time of adversity, you're moving forward with your life. You're moving forward with some normalcy through the university. You're preparing to lead Ukraine tomorrow. With your education, your experience, and your own courage, I firmly believe that what you're doing is preparing to lead your great country for tomorrow. And when you prevail and you're victorious, your country's going to need your leadership. And we just so admire what you're all about and stand with you. Mr. Ambassador, opening comments, please, sir.
I would just like to add again my thanks to Roman and to AUK for having us be your partner. And the only thing I would add to the General's remarks is you are fighting the fight, as you well know, for all of us. This is not, you are carrying the heaviest load and the deepest wounds in this process, but you're fighting for principles that defend all of us at the same time. And we're with you not only because we believe in the same things that you do, but we also realize that we owe it to each other as a civilized world community to resist breaking apart the compact that makes this planet work. And you are right in the center of fighting this fight. So we're doing this, yes, with you, and yes, we're doing it also for you, but we also very well know that we're doing it for ourselves as well. So with that, we look forward to having this conversation with your students today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership, for your support. I mean, without the United States, without the direct involvement of people from the United States who have actually lobbied for us, who have spoken, who were not silent. I mean, this is why we push, I mean, as a US citizen as well, you know, we push our government to support Ukraine. And I'm just so grateful for people like you, Michael, Benjamin, and Nicole, and everyone, and the ASU have been tremendous support. And so thank you so much. Looking forward to your masterclass.
Thank you. Nikki, let's share the screen. And I also will say that the ambassador and I have talked before about how we look forward to the day when we can walk the grounds of American University Kyiv and meet the students in person. It'll be a glorious moment.
Amen. Absolutely.
So this class is presented by Arizona State University, in particular, the Leadership, Diplomacy, and National Security Lab, and it is focused on character-driven leadership. Character-driven leadership is defined as the commitment to do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. Next slide, please. Let's watch this film and think about leadership, and I'll make some comments.
सर आपके लिए उस पार कार का इंतजाम किया है सर आइए सर चल चल
I hate this country.
तुम चलो तो हिंदुस्तान चले 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 लगा हाथ के सूरज सुबह निकाला करे हथेलियों में भरे धूप और उछाल करे ओ लगा हाथ के सूरज सुबह निकाला करे हथेलियों में भरे धूप और उछाल करे उफक पे पाँव रखो और चलो अकड़ के चलो उफक पे पाँव रखो और चलो पकड़ के चलो फलक पकड़ के उठो और हवा पकड़ के चलो फलक पकड़ के उठो और हवा पकड़ के चलो तुम चलो तो हिंदुस्तान चले तुम चलो तो हिंदुस्तान चले हिंदुस्तान चले चलो
Well, as we think our way through what we just saw, it's a great illustration of leadership, and we would argue character-driven leadership. Again, that commitment to do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. And so what we see is an obstacle in everyone's way represented by the tree. And we see people talking about it. And the first thing we would say is leadership is not about talking. Leadership is about action. Leadership is about doing, as we see across your country in this conflict. It is taking action. Leadership is, in this context, we see the rain, and leadership does deal with adversity. And leaders have to understand that adversity will be a part of the environment you lead in, and you have to embrace adversity and be prepared to lead through it, not quit, but embrace the adversity and fight through it. Also, we see the little boy gets off the bus and he takes action. And that's the essence in part of leadership, is taking action. And the first people that help him are his peers. And often who we can rally first are our peers. They have similar values, similar life experiences, can relate to each other versus an older generation or a younger generation. So our peers help us, but peer leadership is hard. And we also see belief. The boys are smiling. They're pushing on the tree in the rain. They believe they can accomplish the task. And then we also see who gets on the tree: women, men, people of other faiths. And so leaders embrace diversity. Diversity makes us stronger. Diversity brings other ideas. And I'm not talking about gender diversity or racial diversity. I'm talking about all of it: gender, racial, geographic, functional, thought leadership. The more diverse we are, the more we have different ideas from different teammates on how to solve a complex problem. Initially, with a young boy, we see what we call direct leadership: hands-on, follow me, do what I'm doing, help me, learn from me. But you see this dialogue between the woman in the car and the man in the car, and she's obviously encouraging him, directing him to get out and help. And that's a task, that's an illustration of indirect leadership. And the more senior you get as a leader, the more you move away from direct leadership to indirect leadership, where you have to establish a vision, provide resources, where you have to empower others, delegate to others, trust others. As President Reagan and Ambassador Polt often say, trust, but verify. So you get other people moving, you check that they're doing the work. But in the case of the woman talks to the man gets out and pushes on the log, but that's indirect leadership. And then we see accomplishment of the task. The log gets moved. Why? Because the leadership created teamwork and the team moved the log. And if you take nothing else away from today's class, what we teach and what we have studied through academics and our own life experiences, the essence of leadership is trust. If people trust you, they will follow you. If you don't establish that trust, earn that trust, sustain that trust, you won't be a leader. You'll just be out taking a walk. No one will follow you. So the essence of leadership is trust. Any comments, Mr. Ambassador, and then any questions from the class?
I make one additional comment to the general introduction of this very evocative opening that we do on most of our leadership presentations, and that is that last image that you saw of the uniformed policeman in the car that did not get out, that did not help. It's a reminder that leaders don't wait for established authority to authorize them to lead or to join the effort. Leaders go ahead and take action. And the smallest boy in this particular instance was the one who decided, I'm going to go do this. He didn't think about, I'm going to wait for the police to go ahead and help me. He just went out and encouraged the others to act. So, and any excuse that we all have, and I've been there myself, to say, well, I'll just wait for the people who are supposed to do this to go ahead and take action, is not a valid excuse. You need to be the little boy. You don't want to wait for the policeman to get out of their Jeep.
Thank you. So any comments and questions on our opening introduction?
Oh, as we see here from General, I see one comment. Young Prime Minister of Great Britain is what the gentleman is commenting, or the individual is commenting on here. Yes, one would think that would be the kind of person hopefully can help our friends in the UK to move forward in a positive direction.
Absolutely. Okay, let's continue. And what we're going to, we've got, let's continue, so we will. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a model for you to help you remember this masterclass. And I often in my career in the Army and even at ASU, people are leaders. And when I ask them, well, what's your leadership style? What drives your leadership? How do you define leadership? They struggle with that because they're actually being the leader, but they haven't thought about leadership. And we want to prepare you as a leader. So when we begin, we think about the leader in me. Who are you? What are your boundaries? What do you stand for? What are your beliefs? What makes you you? And that's only you. I mean, I can't make you. Your parents can't. They've helped you along the way. Priests and others have helped you along the way, but you are the leader in you, and you have to determine who are you, what do you want to do. The second piece is the environment you lead in, ever changing. As you become more senior, as you grow in your beliefs, the leader in you is more fixed, which is a good thing because you become authentic, reliable, understandable. But the environment is ever changing. We didn't anticipate COVID very well. We saw the Russian buildup on your eastern boundary, but couldn't really fathom that in today's age, a country would do, Russia would do what it's done to Ukraine. Unacceptable, but that ever-changing environment happens to all of us. So that's that white circle, that environment that you lead in. Next, please. So in the leader in you, it's, as I said, it's so very important to know yourself, to think about who you are, to really reflect on that. And you're in a great place right now at the university to think about these things, to think about who you are as a leader. Go ahead, Nick. So I mentioned the first point, this who we are comes from our values. So our character, which is often not defined, she's a person of good character, he's a person of good character, but how is that defined? Well, character is the essence of you, and it's made up of your values, your belief system, which we always recommend should start with integrity, being a truthful person, and it's combined with intent. What do you intend to do with your life, with your work? and a common phrase today is transparency. Is the person transparent? Is the organization transparent? They're really talking about intent. Are people clear about their intent? Or do they have a hidden agenda? Do they not tell the truth? Where does that come out? But intent, we believe, and integrity, your values, define your character, who you are. And then you have a leadership style that changes. If you work with a very mature organization, you may be like the woman in the car, somewhat indirect. Vision, resources, trust, delegation, move forward. If you're in a very immature organization or a startup or just beginning a company, you have maybe like the boy on the tree, more hands-on, more guiding and directing and showing people how to do things through your own personal example. So it's important. I've seen leaders fail because they do not adapt their leadership style to the organization that they're leading. Go ahead, please. Over to you, Ambassador.
So all of us as individuals, and certainly all of us as leaders, are motivated by extrinsic and intrinsic elements that motivate us to be who we are, to take action on issues that challenge us. So next slide, and let's look at some of these. So here are what we would give you an example of a set of extrinsic motivators. And you see here the things that sort of we associate with outside appearances: having a title, ambassador, general, rector, president, minister; public recognition, the recognition that you have a certain social or professional status, that you are seen to have authority. This winning over others concept suggests authority, that you have an authority to go ahead as professors at a university. We have authority over our students, not in a negative sense, but nevertheless, we are the ones who evaluate the students' work, and we assess grades according to the work product that is presented to us. Monetary compensation. We associate power and social status to people's wealth and prosperity and what have they accomplished. And in our capitalist society, certainly high income and worth as an individual is sometimes correctly or incorrectly is associated with each other. And of course, this entire concept of having power. Intrinsic motivators are the ones that are much more sort of internal to you, by the word intrinsic automatically. So what makes you feel good about being who you are, helping others to develop, finding meaning, being true, making a difference, personal growth, satisfaction. These are all things that are not visible to the outside, although sometimes feeling this way, these intrinsic motivators can penetrate to the outside into your extrinsic motivators. But the point here is that these are things that are very much personal to you and very much personal to you inside you. Now, putting those two things side by side, the question that we normally ask when we make this presentation is, so which are the ones that are the more important ones? Are extrinsic motivators all shallow and unimportant? And our intrinsic motivators, all the ones that all the good people have share these intrinsic motivators for their leadership style, and all the lousy leaders are the ones that are motivated by extrinsic motivations. And in the absence of any of you commenting on this, my argument to you, our argument to you would be is both. It is very unlikely that you will have a purely intrinsically motivated leader who never has any thought about extrinsic elements. Go back to one slide, please, to the extrinsic ones, Nikki. So you can say, I'm all about doing good for other people. I'm all about helping other folks. I'm all about the satisfaction of being supportive. But doesn't having a title or public recognition and winning over others have an element of allowing you to be that good person. So we often talk in our overall curriculum on leadership about balance. And then when we talk about motivators, extrinsic and intrinsic, we talk about balance. I suppose if you forced me to go ahead and make a choice, I would lean heavily in the direction of intrinsic, but I would not want to abandon the extrinsic motivators. I'm going to look at the chat here right now. Gandhi, Ivan is saying in the chat, perfect point. A fully intrinsically motivated individual from everything we know about history, but in the end result was relied on extrinsic motivators to achieve the amazing things that he achieved. Without the extrinsic elements, the purely intrinsic ones would have been maybe it would have made Gandhi feel good, but not be as effective as he would have been, as he was, given the fact that extrinsic elements also motivated him. So I think it's a perfect example, and I hope that this is a clear concept and an important one, because when the general talks about the leader in me, one of the things that you have to determine is what motivates you, extrinsically or intrinsically. Back to you, General.
Thank you, Ambassador. And just to say one other thing about intrinsic and extrinsic is what's key is balance. And the Ambassador's point about motivation. Asking ourselves, why am I doing this? Am I doing this to make a difference in our work? Or am I doing this because it's about me? And Gandhi did have social status. And Gandhi did have power of words, power of example, power of belief. But he had incredible balance towards intrinsic, and people couldn't attack him because he was intrinsically motivated. So again, it goes to style, but importantly, it's about balance. Go ahead. So then when we look at the environment, and you all are living this, we believe that the world right now, but also even local environments, are VUCA, which is volatile first, which is being fast-paced, ever-changing, hard to predict, very, very rapidly changing because of technology, because of the changing nature of states, non-state actors, state actors. What's the system moving forward between states as we think about the future? Climate change, energy issues, all impact this volatile world. It's uncertain. The world is uncertain. We don't know necessarily how things are going to turn out. We didn't anticipate the pandemic, and now we're dealing with it, still dealing with it 2+ years later, and we'll continue to deal with it. And there will be others on the way, unfortunately, because it's just the way of 7 billion people living on a planet mixed with all the kinds of plant and animal life. These things are going to manifest. And so it's uncertain how things will turn. It is an extremely complex world. The ambassador and I were talking to the head of Hewlett Packard years ago, who make laptop computers, as you well know. And she was telling us that it takes 43 countries to make a Hewlett Packard laptop. That's complex. That's why these supply chain issues are so difficult. Workforce training and preparedness is difficult. And we just are in a period of time of high interstate, interhuman being, complex situations, multi-variables that are difficult to figure out. And it's ambiguous. It's not clear about where things are. People make statements. Business leaders make a statement and stock falls. Bank leaders make a statement and the saving rates fall. So it's very ambiguous. So what do we do about it as a leader? Well, first, with volatile, we need to step back and focus on what is important. We believe that this is a cluttered world. You all are bombarded with Facebook, Twitter, multiple social media accounts, just TikTok. I've never been on it, so I can't comment. But multiple means of receiving information. And that in itself, this cluttered world, is volatile and uncertain for people. So in a volatile situation, we step back and we focus on the main thing we're trying to accomplish, and we help others understand that. With uncertainty, we need to gather experts. One of the things we teach and talk about is when teams form, do you inventory talent? Often teams just get right to the task. But do we take the time to say, has anyone ever done this before? Does anyone know about this? Has anyone tried this? And by inventorying talent, we find people who know something about the uncertainty we're dealing with. With complexity, we need to break problems into smaller sets. At the beginning of the film, the men are making a deal over having someone come remove the log. So they're adding to the complexity with getting somebody to come do it, cut the log up, and get bulldozers and get dump trucks to move the log, et cetera, et cetera. The little boy is just sort of like, let's do it. He makes the complex simple by just saying, let's get a bunch of people out here and move this thing. Of course, that's a tongue-in-cheek statement, but leaders need to make the complex system simple, and leaders need to bring order out of chaos. And they do that by breaking down complexity and taking a piece at a time. And then with ambiguity, you need to be very clear and direct. What is your vision? What is your mission? What do you want people to accomplish? Show them the way. Don't sort of be a fence sitter or work in the gray area. Try to move towards black and white. Be very direct. These things will help people work through this VUCA world in the environment we lead in. Let's continue. So given that, our model begins with values. And think for a moment about what are values. And they're defined in academia this way. Go ahead, please. And we'll come back and talk more about this as the masterclass continues. But it is those core beliefs, what you believe, not what your friends believe, not what your parents believe, not what your professors tell you. It's your core beliefs in the quiet moment of a decision. What do you believe, and what drives your decision based on your beliefs, your values? Next. So as we think about building this model out, values then stand on ethics. And you might think for a moment, what are ethics? Well, again, go ahead, Nikki, please. They're defined by academics in this way. So we work with our students and try to explain that values are what we believe, ethics are how we behave as leaders. So our values drive our behavior, and how we behave drives our leadership. Next, please. So then we get into knowing the environment we lead in, knowing who we are as a leader, knowing our values, that our ethics are how we behave. We become the leader, and we apply the fundamentals and the principles of leadership that we'll talk about, that we are talking about today. And so go ahead, Nikki. We define leadership this way. Now we will break this down for a minute. So first of all, ability is something that can be learned. The ambassador and I often ask, are leaders born or developed? And our answer is yes. There are people who are born with great leadership capabilities, but there are also people who are developed. I am a developed leader. I wasn't born a leader, but became an Army 3-star thanks to a lot of people who helped me along the way. So when you think about a politician, a sports person, a banker in any field, they have an ability that is improved upon. And as you think about your own leader development, we want to be clear about what we think is leader development. Leader development is education. That's where it starts. That's what we're doing this morning. Then leader development moves to training. Leader development then moves to experience, and then it is feedback. Those four things develop a character-driven leader. So I use the example of a teacher. In the United States system, a person is taught to impart knowledge to someone else through education. Then they're trained to be a teacher in high school, maybe mathematics. Then they go in the classroom and they apply what they know to teach others. And they get feedback from their students, the parents, the faculty, their peers. They get feedback. And a good leader, character-driven leader, will then internalize that feedback, that constructive criticism, and improve. So that's that ability. And we're hearing that leaders should also have substance by their action and skills. Motivating others is not enough. Knowing what to do and the actions right is also needed. Absolutely right. We believe that leaders have to be experts in their field because people will follow women and men who know what they're doing. Well, we say in the U.S. colloquially, who know their stuff. And people want to be around those that know what they're doing. So, Taras, that's a great point. Thank you. So the next is creating a vision. Vision is what direction are we going in? What are we trying to accomplish? When you look at a company like Google, their vision is to obtain the world's information, make it available to all. Arizona State University's vision is to be known not by who we exclude, but who we include and how they succeed. So where many American universities are very particular and very exclusive about who can join their university, Arizona State University is inclusive. We realize that education makes a huge difference in a leader's and a person's life. Therefore, we're inclusive. And then it's about positive change. And you have to focus resources as a leader. You will never have enough resources. Look at what your president is calling for every day as the leader of Ukraine. Your country, understandably, needs more resources to destroy and defeat the Russians. And so he, as a leader, is not only out on the front line and talking to the people and talking to the world but he is constantly trying to get resources so they can accomplish their vision for a free, independent, and strong Ukraine. And then the rest of it's self-explanatory about providing opportunities, growth for learning for others. If you want people to stay with you as a leader, you've got to help them grow and get better. Now, if we took out the words positive and we took out the word right solutions, who could that be? What leader might have an ability to create a vision for change, focus resources on solution, inspire, motivate others? Yes, and Vassal said tyrants, and what I would say is Vladimir Putin, personally. He's not thinking about positive change, and he's definitely not thinking about right solutions, correct solutions. So yes, tyrants would be. So words are important. Let's continue, please. So then, understanding this combination of values, what I believe, ethics are how I behave, and leadership, how I create the vision for positive change, etc., leads us to then character-driven leadership. And I define that at the opening of the class, and this is this commitment. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be this way. This is the type of leader I'm committing myself to, and do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. The right thing in the right way for the right reasons. So what many students say to us is, who defines right? And our response to that is this takes us full circle inside the model back to values and ethics define what's right. And we often ask audiences, do you believe there are universal values and are there universal ethics? And Vessel says yes, and we do too, by the way. But the challenge is getting people to agree on the universal values and the universal ethics. But we believe in our lab that things like human rights, democracy, rule of law, the elements from the Declaration of Independence of the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness should be universal values that are accepted by all. Ambassador, any comments on that?
Yes, and the other one I would point to is you saw a picture earlier. I'm sure many of you could identify of Eleanor Roosevelt together with her husband Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But Eleanor Roosevelt, one of her many incredible achievements was that she was one of the authors, one of the spearheaders of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the United Nations in the very early days of that organization. And that concept of universal values of every human being, of universal worth of every human being, is something that the world community actually, in its organizational context of the United Nations, decided we all owned. And in that context, you can then determine what right is and condemn when that contract to each other is broken. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not just about the small concept of, it's not small, about this limited concept of human rights in terms of don't mistreat somebody, don't kick a dog, don't kill babies, etc. It is about the overall concept of the worth of every human being living on this planet. And in that context, this definition comes much more easily than if one has to argue about, well, what does determine right? Well, the world community has decided what right is. The question is, do you want to subscribe to that value or do you not?
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead. So then, again, we go full circle back to what we talked about in talking about the film, and that is, to sum up the model, because this is the whole model, is the leader in me knows who they are as a person and what they stand for. And the environment I lead in is ever changing, but we have to be aware of it, to be that expert, but also to be believed and also to be credible in all things that we do. We've got to know what's happening, what's coming next as a leader. We often say that leaders should think about, what am I doing right now? Logically, what is next? And leaders need to think about what could be. That's that vision. You know, you all, we would encourage you to be thinking about, once you defeat the Russians, how can you restore Ukraine as rapidly as possible, help the people who've had to leave come home, and establish a normal life in a strong leading country. So that environment's ever changing. Then we get into our beliefs, how we behave, that leadership, that ability to create that vision and that character-driven leadership. And then at the top of the triangle, what you see is the essence of leadership, and that is trust. So hopefully that this helps you remember some of the key tenets of character-driven leadership and how they fit together. And we'll look at them a little deeper. Go ahead, please, Nikki. So in values, go ahead. We talked about first that they develop, they're what your personal beliefs are, and they come about, and we'll show you a graphic in a minute, that they come about from social settings, from teachers, from parents, from friends, from religion, from impactful things that happen. I argue that your whole nation is in a crucible right now. And as you come through this conflict, you will be different. You will have values of what you think about things. The United States Second World War, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, others, the 9/11 attacks on the United States, the stock market crash in the 1920s, all these things impact our value system. And values exist personally, your personal belief system, organizationally, the companies you're in, here in the University of Kyiv, there's an organizational values about that. At Arizona State University, our organizational values are access, excellence, and impact. So organizations have values, and we'll talk about that. And then national or regional cultural values as well. So all those work together, personal, organization, and national. And then they're created as shown in that second bullet on all kinds of different factors. And go ahead, Nikki, this graphic that we'll see in just a moment will show us, in graphic form, how people's values are formed. But that first bullet there, values are like glasses. Our belief system, when we put them on, that's how we see the world. So if we believe in respect and respect of all human beings and all mankind, we're not going to be real judgmental about a homeless person or someone who dresses differently than we do, or someone who's doesn't have our same faith beliefs. We're going to respect that person and put that respect first. And that's going to stimulate how we act. We realize that all human beings have something to add, have goodness, and all can contribute. So we respect them. And they are enduring. They stay with us. We believe what our grandmother told us, we still believe when we're older about. I learned that from my grandmother. And they are the value systems of our lives. Go ahead, please, Nikki. So this is the kind of a simple graphic, but important, of where they come from. The national culture drives it. Religion drives it. One of our authors, we have a book that we use called True North by Bill George is the author. And Mr. George evaluates leaders by talking about the crucibles that they've come through. These moments in life that are pressure-filled, that are tough, when we come out on the far side and reflect on them, those crucibles make us stronger, make us clearer as leaders about what we want to do, how we want to do it. So all these things play into values. I would say that in the media in particular, I believe we need to have more caution today. There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation that's thrown out as reliable information. When I was a much younger man, at least in the American system, the media was under a lot of scrutiny to have verifiable facts to be able to report a story. We have not held those standards at the same level that we did in the past. So I do think in some of these things, I would coach you all to be critical thinkers about what input you're getting as you make a values judgment, and as you say, this is the value I'm going to believe in. Make sure it's based on strong, factual ideas that you want to believe in. Ambassador, any comments?
We have this, we talk about values a lot, and as the initial entry point into our discussion of character-driven leadership, because we find many times when you ask someone, please tell me what your values are, there's a hesitancy or there's a long pause, because we don't often automatically reflect on these things. And we want to open up this conversation and this thought process amongst all the people whom we touch in our leadership studies to think about this. Because once you identify who you are and what you believe in, the rest of what you do with your life as a leader, as a person, flow from that knowledge and that self-awareness. And I found that in myself as we began, the General and I together, to do this. And I learned a lot from him, from his very, very structured approach to learning leadership throughout his strong military career, that I didn't often confront myself to these questions. What are my blue bubbles that I come from? And when I did that, it became some of the things that I used to do, hopefully correctly, instinctively, became much more organized and much more structured. And I think it's an important way to cut through some of the fog of leadership, to create the self-awareness as to where do my values, where do I ultimately come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. So, what are personal values? What are something we often get asked by students? Well, so what are your values? If you're talking about all these, they're so important. When I was in the Army, we looked at 7: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. Personal courage being physical courage, but also moral courage, the more important. These are the values that we teach at Arizona State University: to be responsible, a responsible human being, responsible for you, what you do, what you're required to do, like turning in papers on time or reading a book that you're supposed to read for your curriculum. Be responsible. We talked about respect earlier. Integrity, be a person of truth. And selflessness, put other people before yourself always. I mean, I personally believe you can go a long way in life in many cultures by being truthful, respecting other people, and being selfless, putting other people before yourself. You can go a long way. So these are just some personal values. These personal values are what we talk to students at Arizona State about. Go ahead, please, Nikki. And they come from the Arizona Charter, the university charter, which is the vision that the president and the leadership at ASU has established. So we are governed by the state, and so we're public. And we talked about that inclusiveness and success, but we also do use-inspired research. We don't study if earthworms like dirt or chocolate. We study use-inspired. How is the research going to help mankind? But we also, and one of our students today pointed out the key nature of responsibility, but we believe as a university, we're responsible for these things, the economic through health. And by the way, when we talk about the communities it serves, Arizona believes, State University believes it serves the communities around the university, the state of Arizona, the nation of the United States, and all of our friends and allies, including Ukraine. And so we feel responsible to serving your community in the capacities that we can, and in part why we're with you today. So that charter drives both personal values and organizational values, but this is Richard Barrett from England talking about alignment. Let's listen.
So what is the alignment between, how important is the alignment between personal values, current culture of the organization, desired culture? The alignment is important because when you have that alignment, it actually releases commitment, enthusiasm, creativity, because you're able to come to the organization each day and you don't have to park your personal values in the car park with your car. You can actually walk into the building and be who you truly are. And when you have to park an aspect of yourself outside of the building, one becomes schizophrenic. And so you come into the organization with a facade, but it's difficult to maintain that facade because what happens is you get frustrated. You become angry because guess what? You're misaligned. There's a misalignment between your ego and your soul, who you really are and who you think you're expected to be. And so can you have high performance in that situation? No. You can't have high performance because you're continually regulating yourself to make sure you don't step out of bounds. In other words, fear is kicking in and holding you back from being who you really are. So that's why alignment is important. You want to feel, when you walk into the workplace, that you can be fully who you are, so you can explore every aspect of your own being and give your gift to the organization.
Well, we believe that he has nailed it, and he is so right. And there's several aspects to this, and I am sure that many of you have been in organizations where there's not alignment to your values, that you struggle to go there to work every day. And it's hard to be your authentic self in that environment every day because of the belief system of the leader doesn't match your belief system. So there's several aspects. Number one, we talk to students often about when you go to look for a job and you're interviewed, you should interview the organization itself saying, what are your organizational values? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What are you trying to do with your work? And try to find, often leaders don't understand where they fit. So fit is important. And if you can't fit in an organization, you're not going to be there very long. But secondly, and as importantly, as a leader, we encourage you to establish an organization that creates alignment, that takes the personal values of the women and men that you have the honor and privilege to lead and gets the most out of them. Believe me, when you have an organization that everybody has shared values and a shared sense of accomplishment, you can do a lot of things. You can get a lot done. But if you create an environment where people are parking themselves in the car park, as Richard Barrett says, and being concerned about coming into work, you're going to have a problem and you're not going to be a fully functioning organization. Comments, Ambassador.
This is an important video and thought that the general is just leading you through that we'd like you to keep in mind as we get to the end of our masterclass today. We'll show you another video and we're going to talk about the concepts of what an organization does and why an organization does what it does. The concept of what and why and the more importance of the why than the what is going to become hopefully very apparent in what we're going to be discussing with you as we conclude today. So keep that in mind, that most organizations, almost all organizations, know what they do. And when the general talks about interviewing a prospective employer that you're going to be talking to, and you interview them as well as they interviewing you, the most important thing that you want to find out about the organization you're about to join, to be aligned with it, is to find out why they do what they do, not simply what they do. Keep that in mind, and you'll see what we get to when we have to come at the end of the masterclass today. Thank you, General.
Please go ahead, Nikki. Thank you. So this is how academics talks about organizational values. And it's interesting, we work with a lot of different organizations. So hopefully an organization will state what its values are. For instance, the Arizona State Access, Excellence, Impact. But many don't. And even if they don't state their values, they create their values because they're the collective beliefs and goals and values of the members. The members are going to act on what they believe in. So if they don't believe in respect, there's going to be inappropriate comments made about how someone's dressed or how someone looks or someone from a different race. And this will be permitted inside the climate. But if they believe in respect, they're going to say, hey, we're not going to talk that way. We're not going to speak ill of other people. All can contribute. Let's work together on things. So whether it's printed or stated or unstated, organizations have values. And those values either contribute to the success of the organization or they don't. The other thing that values do, organizational values, is they make the organization sustainable. It will be there for a long time. There is a company in the United States called Heinz, and Heinz Company was created in the 1800s, and it's a food company, mostly with ketchup, but other foods as well. And it was founded by a man named Henry Heinz, and when he founded it, his overriding value that he founded the company on was do the right thing. Because he didn't want to poison people. He didn't want his food products to cause any health risk at all. And he established that, encouraged the workforce to speak up, to act correctly, to do the right thing. And here they are 100 years later, still very strong company. So there's an aspect of sustainability with with values as well. Please continue. And so I've mentioned this multiple times, but I'll just, because you all are a part of it, we are very proudly aligned with American University of Kyiv. So access is that we fundamentally believe that men and women have the right to have access to learning, education, knowledge. We're in the knowledge era. How can we not provide information and education to others? Excellent. We try to have our faculty and staff work, research, study to be excellent, and we expect our students to push towards excellence and become excellent themselves. And then we expect our university, our students, our faculty to have positive impact globally and at home. So these are the values that drive the university organizationally. Go ahead, please.
This is, if I may, General, just one comment on this very important concept. This is so important to our partnership together with you, as in terms of the DNA, if you wish, of Arizona State University, and we hope also AUK at the same time. And that is that education is not something that you do simply for yourself. It is not something simply to enrich you. Yes, it does all that as well, but it is about what you're going to do with that. And that impact statement after access and excellence is so critical that it's not something that there's such a culture, which also pervades in many cases in our country here, that a particularly higher education is a privilege of the elites. And that's exactly what we are not about at Arizona State University. Education is a right of everyone and the responsibility of everyone to be educated and to be prepared to contribute to the overall success of our societies. So the reason we are a 140,000 student university and not a 140 student university is part of that. Education is for everyone and not just for the privileged. Thank you, General.
Thank you. Go ahead. So understanding values, and if you have questions or comments, just go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll respond to them. But understanding that values are personal and organization, and quite frankly, national and cultural, we turn to ethics. And so this ethics that we talked about in describing the model is about our behavior. And it's aspirational, what we should do, what we should be like as a society, and right, wrong, good, evil. And then in particular, where we really focus this part of our masterclass is ethics gets wrapped around these concepts of authenticity through serving the greatest good and competence, which we'll talk about in that second or center bullet. And ethics help us understand what is leadership versus what is good, or I would even argue great leadership. Because if the essence of leadership is trust, leaders have to be completely ethical in all that they deal with to earn and sustain and build that trust. Go ahead. So as we look at these core concepts, what you have here on the left is Sandra Day O'Connor, the first female Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And she's swearing in a friend of ours, Ambassador or Secretary of the Air Force, Barbara Barrett. She had both titles. She was a U.S. Ambassador to Finland. She was also U.S. Secretary of the Air Force in the last presidential administration. But even though she's incredibly successful, she's a pilot, she flies F-16s, she's been trained as a cosmonaut, she runs a major ranch in Montana. As I said, she's been a U.S. ambassador, a member of our government at the highest level. She is a genuine, authentic person every day. And what you see is what you get. I'm sure many of you have gone to work and someone has said, what kind of mood is the boss in? Well, how are they today? And so instead of bringing our full self to the work and being focused on the work, we're worried about what kind of mood or what kind of presence the leader has that day. We want to be authentic as leaders. We want to be the same every day, every moment. We don't want to be sort of like a thermometer going up and down based on the weather. We want to be consistent. So a part of being an ethical leader is being authentic, because people know what you stand for. You're authentic in what you'll put up and not put up with. And so people understand that and what they'll be called out for. Go ahead, please. So here we see this on this slide, this contrast between self-interest and President Putin killing innocent people in Ukraine for his own ego, for his own interest, for his own advantage. And then we see the Dalai Lama, who lives a very simple life. And so there's this tension between self-interest and selfless. And we often ask students, why are these on the same slide? Why would we present them together? And the answer is about balance. Maslow would tell us through his hierarchy of needs that people need shelter, warmth, food, clothing, a sense of self-worth. And these are the things in self-interest that we have to provide for our family. We can be completely selfless, but we still have to provide for others, take care of ourselves, our health, so we can contribute. And then selfless, we always want to put others first and be that selfless servant leader. And so what's important here is, again, balance. And as the ambassador talked about on other slide, about motivation. What's motivating me? Is this about me, or is this about the people I lead? And you think about this ethically. If someone comes to you and says, I'd like to take you to a great football match. We're going to have front seats. We're going to meet the players. We're going to go to a hotel afterwards, a 5-star hotel, go to a great party. Are they offering all these things to you because they're your friend? Or are they offering this because of the position you hold and they're trying to influence you? And you have to ask these questions. Would I be offered this if I didn't have the position I have? And that's where the ethics play into it. Go ahead, please. So then we look at self-discipline. And I think of your soldiers often. And they've prevailed through month after month. They've had to get their equipment ready. They've had to get support one another. They've had to be mindful of the people living in the villages and cities where they're fighting. They have to understand their weapon systems. They have to be self-disciplined. They have to get up and do the same things to make sure that they're ready to go to fight and defeat the Russians while they protect the people of Ukraine. And as you do these things, when you say, I'm going to take a walk today, or I'm going to eat better today, or I'm going to study today, and you do these things, you say, I'm going to study, and you do it, these small tasks build up sort of a shield that by over and over again accomplishing these things, we can stop against temptations, because we will be tempted in life. And ethically, we want to make sure we maintain our character, our reputation, our integrity, so we can act ethically. And self-discipline does this for us. And your soldiers show a lot of self-discipline on the battlefield. Next, please. And then the next concept we want to talk about is justice. And it is not, you might say, well, that's what the lawyers do, or that's what the courts do. That's true in part, but leaders deal with justice all the time. Hiring a new person, a promotion, firing someone, holding someone accountable. And so what we talk about in regarding ethics is, number one, that blindfold she's wearing is that leaders need to be fair. They need to be blind. They need to not be judgmental when someone walks in the door and says, well, this person's from this area, and therefore I'm going to act this way, and this person's from another area and act a different way. Justice is blind, treats all people equal. Those scales she's holding are, at least in the United States, psychiatrists tell us that 70% of decisions are made on emotion. To be just, you can't make your decisions on emotion. You have to make your decisions on facts. So those scales are tipped towards innocent or guilt based on the facts. You have to have the facts. And the sword indicates that justice is swift. And what we mean by that is that if you have someone that's acting inappropriately in your organization and you do not act, it is like a cancer that eats away at the organization. People ask the question, when are they going to deal with this person? So leaders have to be swift and act. Failing to act is not acceptable for an ethical leader. And then Terrace is saying that it's like equity and trust. And again, I'm not familiar with Ukrainian law, but I accept your statement, sir, or ma'am. And the thing I would just say is this is an opportunity for you all to change that as you move forward as a country and stand for how do you have an equitable justice system that the people trust. You can do it. And then last, we look at this sense of duty. And this is a leader that we admire, and quite frankly, and I love the fact, I wish I would have said it along my career, but I love the fact that your president said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. I just wanted to go sign up and say, where do you need me, Mr. President? And so duty is one of the most significant aspects of ethics because it's this concept, a hard concept to fulfill your moral obligation. And, you know, here's our ambassador representing the United States in Serbia, Montenegro, and then in Estonia. And every day, every hour, every minute, he had to fulfill the moral and legal obligations that he had representing our country to these other nations. It's not easy. I mean, you know, your soldiers are going out every day and defending or attacking or securing different parts of Ukraine because they're fulfilling this responsibility. And your president is out with the soldiers, out with the people, out with your parliament, out with the different parts of your country to do his duty as the president of Ukraine. But it's something that we need to be mindful of often as leaders, as am I or am I not fulfilling my obligation? Even as students, when you take a course, you're obligated to do the coursework. It's your duty to do your coursework. As a parent, it's your duty to look after your children. As a spouse, it's your duty to love, nurture, and care for your spouse. So duty is a tough, maybe not so tough to understand, but tough to live if you commit yourself to it, but worthy of that commitment, I might say. Go ahead, please. And then we look at competence, and maybe some of you know this football referee. Many of our internationals that we've taught do know this gentleman. But what we talk about here in competence, some of you alluded to earlier, and that is that people will follow people who know their stuff. But also, if we think about a football match, if the referee is constantly pulling a yellow card or a red card, it basically stops the game. People become intimidated by the rule setter, and it stops initiative, creativity on the field, energy, and commitment on the field. But if the referee never pulls the card, well, then we have chaos, and we have people getting hurt with slide tackles and fouls and inappropriate actions by the football players on the field. So competence comes again with this word we've used multiple times about balance, knowing your field, knowing your expertise, but applying it successfully or efficiently. You know, how do you encourage your workforce to be highly innovative, highly creative, highly energetic, but also within the rules of creating work so that it's ethical? That's the challenge for a leader. And then all these things, authenticity and selflessness and self-discipline and justice and duty and competence, go together, focused on the greater good, the behavior accomplishing the greater good. Service before self, the greater good, serving a cause greater than self. These are all the things the leader, ethical leader, should aspire to accomplish. Mr. Ambassador, over to you.
I really like this concept of competence and the stress the general is putting on this, because we live in an age and in a world where of instant expertise, under quotation marks, where people get on the social media and become influencers and opinion makers with very little competence to show for the influence that they exercise. It is, and as consumers of these inputs, it is incumbent on us to go ahead and draw the distinction between someone who is just blowing what we would call here in this country hot air, or someone who actually knows why he's putting out that yellow card. That uniform that referee is wearing is just the outward representation of the fact that he's had decades of experience of learning how to be a just referee. And I think we too easily and too lightly accept nowadays the expertise of people who just call themselves experts with nothing to point to in terms of where they actually draw that expertise from. And in the end result, and all of you who are participating in today's experience together with us know this very well, the one thing that we cannot teach you is expertise. Expertise happens over time, over this, and your rector mentioned in his introduction that you are committed as AUK also to lifetime learning. And all of us are part of that lifetime learning cycle, and that's where expertise comes from. And with all due respect, and I'll stop with that, to the youth culture, and the general and I, the general is a young man. I'm for all of us who have a few more years than you under our belt. I admire the energy and the engagement of youth, but we cannot teach you over one weekend expertise. That competence comes from a longer journey of acquiring knowledge and then exercising it responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And the key point here, ladies and gentlemen, is that leadership is a journey, not a destination, and you have to practice it. You have to have the courage to go out and do it. I mean, I often think about football, and that the referee is one person on the field controlling 22 others, and they're with thousands watching, and one mistake, they're in trouble and will be taken apart. But they have the competence and the courage and to go and control a game so that it can be played effectively. But leadership is a journey, and we must constantly work to try to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday as a leader. Go ahead, Nikki. So just like we talked about, there are personal values and organizational values, the same is true ethically. So there are personal ethics, what I believe in and how I behave personally, with those ideas of authenticity through competency. But businesses need to operate ethically as well. And often the terms you hear in talking about organizations are they fair? Do they have compassion for their workforce, but also compassion for the people they're providing products to? And do they encapsulate these ideas of honesty and being responsible for what they do? And again, if you are ethical, it too adds to being sustainable. And in that middle bullet, unfortunately, you see a few, but unfortunately, in the United States, there have been many companies that have failed because of a lack of ethics, because they have lied about their business practices or their net worth or their stock. And this has then caused more and more government regulation. And it's like that referee, the government's pulling more and more red cards, and that stifles creativity, entrepreneurialism, creation of new ideas. People say, I can't do it. And so creating a ethical organization is key for leaders. And again, being authentic and setting clear boundaries, people then understand who you are, what you stand for. They want to be a part of your organization, and your organization moves forward and is profitable. So organizational ethics are key, and as leaders, you have to create them. And even if you don't, you have to enforce them. And you know, a key sign of organizational ethics, or perhaps asking, do you have a code of conduct for your organization, or are there rules for what you do? And you know, we see an unethical organization called the Russian Army that are killing people, destroying property, raping women, horrible ethical behavior. And then we see positive behavior in your force. And that's what is key to leadership, is creating ethical behavior. Go ahead, please. And Terrace is commenting that does organizational ethics equal institutionality? It can. I mean, it can create the institution and sustain the institution by having clear organizing principles around how you're going to ethically behave. Good comment. So then we turn now to leadership, and go ahead. And we started before about this ability to create something that can be learned, create a vision. Where are we going? We talked about how critical positive change is, and then helping focus resources on right solutions. I mean, Ambassador and I both worked in large organizations, in his case, the State Department, and mine, the Department of Defense, that had a lot of money and a lot of people, but our arguments were always we didn't have enough money and we didn't have enough people. Because leaders, the more senior you get, you have to be more like your president. And that is, yes, keep people focused on the vision and keep people focused on the mission, but go and get the resources for the people. Trust your people, but you need to get them resources. You can't give them something to do if you don't give them the resources. And then it's the leader's responsibility, like that little boy, to inspire others. Let's get out in the rain, drop my school bag, get on this log, and get it gone. And motivate others to do that by being optimistic, positive, sure of yourself, belief in your people, belief in your mission, and then providing this opportunities for growth and learning. We both, the Ambassador and I, have seen where people don't want to let their people go. No, you've got to stay here. You can't do that. We've got the work of the organization to do. Well, but if I went to this class, if I went to get this certificate, if I went to this seminar, I'd be better. No, you've got to stay here. When you don't do that, when you don't allow, everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to be better. Everyone wants to be more competent. If you don't let your people grow and learn, they're going to leave. And there's a great book written called Good to Great. And in the book Good to Great, his analysis of why U.S. companies in particular have gone from being good companies to great companies is because they hired wonderful human talent. They got the best of the best. And when you can get good people on your team and you can keep those people, your team can accomplish almost anything. You can have a big vision, but if you don't have good people, you're not going to win. Manchester United might want to play world-class football, but if they don't get the best players and the coaches and the best system on their team, they're just going to be a mediocre football team. So you've got to let people grow and learn. Go ahead, please. So many of you might know who this is, but I'll give him a brief introduction. This is General and former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who tragically we've lost recently. He had a tremendous career of service and character-driven leadership. His parents were immigrants to the United States from the country of Jamaica, and he grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He went to City College of New York, and he joined the United States Army in a time where integration had just been ordered by President Harry Truman. So he was a young officer in a time of high discrimination, high prejudice, high bias, and yet he persevered. And he led in Vietnam and post-Vietnam. He was America's first Black national security advisor. He was America's first Black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, our senior military leader who advises the president, and he was our first Black Secretary of State. He's going to be asked a question by a White House fellow, which I please notice there's no notes in front of him, and he didn't know which questions were coming when, but this is Secretary of State Colin Powell talking about leadership. Please, Nikki.
My name is Amy Wilkinson. I'm a White House Fellow. My question is how you would define the key characteristics of effective leadership that allow you to go and be an advocate for good.
Trust. The longer I have been in public service and the more people have asked me about leadership over the years, leadership ultimately comes down to creating conditions of trust within an organization. Good leaders are people who are trusted by followers. Leaders take organizations past the level that the science of management says is possible. One of my sergeants back in the infantry school at Fort Benning almost 50 years ago, which is where I learned everything I ever got to learn about leadership, was at the infantry school. And he said to me one day, he said, "Lieutenant, you'll know you're a good leader when people follow you, if only out of curiosity." I've never had a better definition, because what he was saying, and I've seen it experienced in my life so many times. What he was saying is they trust you, and you have built up that trust. How did you do it? Clear mission and statement, selfless service. People look to you and they trust you because you're serving selflessly as the leader, not self-serving, selflessly, and that you prepare the followers, you train them. You give them what they need to get the job done. Don't give them a job if you're not going to give them the resources, and that you're prepared to take the risks with them. And so they would teach us at the infantry school, no matter how cold it is, Lieutenant, you must never look cold. No matter hungry you all are, Lieutenant, you must never appear hungry. No matter how terrified you are, Lieutenant, you must never look terrified. Because if you are scared, terrified, hungry, and cold, they will be scared, terrified, hungry, and cold. I've gotten away with that many, many times in the course of my career by being scared to death, cold, and wanting to go to sleep. But no, let's go. Let's keep going. Let's go around this corner, if only out of curiosity. And they'll follow you into the darkest night, down the deepest valley, up the highest hill, if they trust you. So the essence of leadership is about doing all that the science of management says you can with resources, but then taking it that extra step and giving it that spark. And that spark comes from getting people to trust you so that they will follow you, if only out of curiosity. Thank you.
We very much appreciate this film because we both worked for General Powell. I was a young second lieutenant. He was my colonel, and the ambassador worked directly for him when he was the Secretary of State. I just think it's wonderful. In a short period of time, he sums up really the importance of leadership. And this trust is so critical. And so we when we first started teaching 10 years ago, we would leave it here on trust, but we now go on further and we talk about how do leaders earn trust. And maybe a few of you in chat could answer that question. I'll look for it. But how does a leader, if the essence of leadership is trust, how does a leader earn trust? Create trust? So we have being accountable and holding accountable, listening to followers. Yes? Some other ideas? Very good. Other ideas? Integrity? Absolutely. Couple more? Connecting with empathy. So emotional intelligence is very important. Walking the talk. Yes, absolutely.
Telling the truth. Yeah.
by implementing promises and obtaining results. Pretty great.
Good.
So there is a book called The Speed of Trust written by Stephen Covey, who argues that companies can operate faster if people trust one another. Here's saying up and standing no to unethical stuff, behavior, yes. Everyday effort to prove trustworthiness, absolutely. Very good. All these are very good. So let's go ahead, take care of the team as one. So go ahead, please, Nikki. So in Stephen Covey's book, Speed of Trust, he uses the analogy and the graphic of a tree to help us remember how leaders earn trust. And it begins with just what you have said. The roots of the tree are integrity. Go ahead, please, Nikki. So you act in accordance. We talked about belief systems and values. It is you act how your belief system. And I often with humor talk to ASU students that you'll know if you're acting with integrity when the police pull you over. Often here in the United States, when the police pull you over, the first thing they say is, "Do you know why I stopped you?" And a lot of people, their answer will be, "Well, no, I have no idea." When they know exactly that they were speeding, and instead of acting with integrity and say, "Yes, officer, I was speeding," they sort of say, "Well, no, I have no idea." So it is not just simple honesty; it's acting in accordance with your belief of being a person of integrity. That's the root system. Go ahead, please. And then the next is the trunk of the tree. And the trunk of the tree is intent. And it's what do you intend to do? And today, as I said, at least in the United States, this word transparency crops up quite a lot. He's not transparent. She's not transparent. They weren't transparent about what this action or that action. This is being clear with your vision and why you do what you do. The example I use sometimes is about a doctor. There's two doctors. Say the ambassador's a doctor and I'm a doctor, and we're both orthopedic doctors. So you ask the ambassador, why do you want to be a doctor? Well, I want to heal people. I want to prevent human suffering. I want to help people have a full life. You ask me, why do you want to be a doctor? I want to prevent suffering. I want to heal people. I want people to have a full life. I also want 4 houses, 6 sailboats, and play golf every afternoon. The way that manifests itself in leadership and behavior is the ambassador, as a doctor, will only see the people that he can truly take care of in a day. So if that's 6, he'll only see 6 people to give his full attention to and create his intent of healing and helping people. My company will pack people in. We'll see 18 in a day to make more money for the firm, make more money. We're driven by that extrinsic motivation of having power and money. Where the ambassador's driven, as his style of doctor is driven intrinsically by helping others. So this is intent. And the author talks about if you've got a clear intent, you've got a big tall trunk of a tree. And if your intent's hidden, it's down sitting in the ground. You've got a short trunk of a tree. So go ahead, please, Nikki. So intent and integrity combine to provide you your character. They make up your character. Go ahead, please. And then the next is the branches of the tree. And the branches of the tree are this idea of tasks. What are my talents? What can I do? What's my attitude? Am I optimistic, pessimistic, realistic? Am I pleasant in my attitude? What is my attitude about life, about other people? How do I approach things? And my skill set, which many of you have mentioned about being knowledgeable, being an expert. Yes, do I have the best skill set? Tied to then, do I have the underpinning knowledge to work on those skills? And then how's my style? Am I abrupt? Am I gruff? Or am I approachable and pleasant in what I do? Well, those combinations then produce results. And go ahead, Nikki. Then the branches of the tree, or the leaves of the tree, are the results. Go ahead. So results and capabilities equal competency. Go ahead, please. So when you combine character and integrity and intent give you character, capabilities and results give you competency. When you have character and you are competent, you know your stuff, people will trust you. That's the argument. That's how you create that trust, through competency and character. So what you're doing with your degrees right now and your studies at American University of Kyiv, these are adding to your capabilities. And then your values, your ethical behavior, your leadership style, they create that character and and get the results and create the competency. Go ahead, please. So we have in America, we had a theorist, an author named Peter Drucker. And Peter Drucker did a lot of work about management, but he has confused the world with management versus leadership. And the ambassador is trying to unconfuse the world. So some comments on this, please, sir.
We make a big deal in our leadership curriculum, usually right up front, telling people what we do in our leadership development continuum and what we don't do. And one of the things we don't do is we do not do management training. Your masterclass with us today is about character-driven leadership. It is not about management. So we always use this slide to point out how we differentiate managers from leaders without in any way trying to denigrate the importance of managers. We need good managers. By gosh, do we need good managers. But we also need good leaders, and the two are not the same. So here we've given you a few examples of how we differentiate between those two, because we believe in the overall context of preparing managers and leaders in our various educational systems, no matter what country they're in. There's a lot of confusion, as the general says, about those two things. So let's just take a few just to sort of give you a sense and maybe get your reaction if you agree or disagree. A manager has a short-range perspective. Again, not to say a manager is short-sighted. That's not what that means. It means that the manager focuses on the immediate task at hand and gets it done. The leader has to look beyond, over the horizon, beyond what's visible right now that needs to get done. She needs to go ahead and decide that we need to go ahead and approach the issue that no one else maybe has even thought about. This how and when in the next bullet and the asking what and why on the leadership side are again relevant to what we're going to show you at the very end of this masterclass, and that is, again, it's a very practical thing. Managers say we have an issue. How do we solve it, and how quickly can we get it done? A leader has to decide what issues do we want to approach at all, and why do we want to do that? And she has to have an answer for that. So you see the different perspectives that complement each other, but are not the same. And individuals who confuse the two, meaning that leaders who act like managers, and that's probably the most dangerous one in my view, leaders who act like managers shortchange themselves and the organization of their leadership responsibility. Managers sometimes also lead, and that's not nearly as problematical as the other way around, leaders who are managers. But I can assure you, I've seen many a leader who micromanages, even though she has the responsibility or he has the responsibility to lead. Those two things are separate, and we need people to do them well in both categories. The last thing I want to mention in that lineup here is doing things correctly and doing the correct thing, because it relates directly to all the things the general has mentioned up until now, talking about values and ethics and trust. Again, the practical thing for a manager is, here is a task, let's get it done. This is how, this is the timeline, and let's do it well and correctly. For the leader, this is not a practical consideration, it's a value proposition. Doing the correct thing. It's even in our definition of character-driven leadership. doing the right thing in the right way for the right reasons is doing that is the same concept as doing the correct thing. So I would argue to you, and then I'll stop, that the leadership responsibility is a higher order of responsibility than a manager one, even though you need both. And you're welcome to agree or disagree, but we thought it was important to go ahead and highlight that separation or those differences between managers and leaders. Thank you, General.
Thank you, Ambassador. Go ahead, please, Nikki. So, and this is our final video, and then afterwards we'd love to take some comments and questions, and then so to us, we believe that when you go back to look at leader versus manager, and what do leaders really do besides earn trust? Leaders do what Simon Sinek is going to point out in this video. So
General, you went on mute for a second, sir.
go ahead and run the video, please. Thank you, Ambassador.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one.
So I think he gives you all a very significant illustration of the importance for leaders to start with why. As the ambassador was saying earlier, managers and others often say what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it and where we're going to do it. But if we can get people to focus on why we're going to do things, that creates passion, energy, effort, because people are then aligned to the purpose of what the leader's trying to do, and it helps create trust. So one more slide, please, Nikki. So going back to our model then, we believe that the character-driven leadership, that commitment to do the right thing, right way, and right reason is what's needed for the world, let alone our countries. And we believe that this leadership is based upon our belief system, our values, the ethics, how we behave, this leadership ability to create vision, focus resources, inspire, motivate others, and provide opportunities for growth and learning. And that then creates trust. And with trust, leaders can accomplish what they set out to. So thank you for this morning. I look forward to your comments. We're going to continue until we wrap up. But Ambassador, your comments, and then I'd really like to hear your comments and or questions from the class. Over to you, Ambassador, please.
Thank you, General. Just one comment, because we actually would like to hear from you in the remaining minutes we have. And that is something, again, that General and I have talked about a lot over the years, and that is the concept of putting yourself into the other, as a leader, putting yourself into the shoes of the other side, either the negotiating other side, the adversary, for that matter, even the partner. Henry Kissinger used that concept a lot in negotiating some of the key treaties and arrangements the United States had during his time in foreign affairs leadership, of being able to understand where the other side comes from. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to suggest here that you should feel Putin's pain. The pain should be totally on his side. He should feel all the pain from you for the outrageous crime he's committing against your country. But it is important for your success to understand where he's coming from, not to agree, not to accept, not in any way submit, but to understand. So that concept of this graphic of building your character-driven leadership on values, ethics, and leadership gives you the grounding to be able to put yourself into a moment into the dark side, if you like Star Wars, and go over to the dark side just to understand the dark side, and therefore come back and use your Jedi qualities to go ahead and be the character-driven leader that you should be. So I think it's a good way to achieve success as a leader, to understand the opposite side or the other side of an engagement on a leadership issue. But with that, as the General said, we would love to have your comments and your input. And I already see one here, General. Let's see, where was that? You're on mute, Ben.
Thanks. Yeah, Ivan, great question. To what extent can a leader be a weak or poor manager? Are the leaders with zero management skills? The answer would be yes. I wouldn't say that they're effective leaders. They could be character driven. They could be very, very ethical, have great values. But if they have no skills to motivate and inspire people moving forward, you can have leaders like that. I would argue that they're not going to be around very long. You've got to get the work done. It goes back to that sustainment of trust comes from results. At the end of the day, you've got to get results as a leader for people to follow you. So thank you for that question. Other comments or questions, please? So the question is, leadership is something highlighted everywhere, while most of the people think of it as a Superman skill, which can do no magic. Why? But why followership is not mentioned? While this role is accepted by a majority of people, also there is much more followers than leaders. Exactly right. And I would just say, and we say that to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And we believe that followers have to understand how they contribute to the team, and be good listeners, and yet have ideas to help the leader. We have a concept. This was a short master class, and we appreciate you all hanging in here with us. But there's a concept we talk about quite a bit called leading up, down, left, and right. And leading up is understanding what does your boss want to accomplish, and how do you help her get that done. That is this idea of followership. And then left and right is how do you help your peers be successful versus competing with them in a negative way. And lastly, how do you give clear guidance to the people beneath you? So followership is critically important, and thank you for highlighting that. And then there's a question, who are the leaders in the war now and why? I can't comment on that. I don't have enough inside knowledge to make a comment. That's something you all will have to judge. I would just say that at the political level, your president, from what we know, is doing an exceptional job of the why, the sovereignty and of the nation of Ukraine, and trying to get people behind stopping an illegal invasion by the Russians, an unethical. But as far as your military leaders and your other national leaders, I'm sorry, but I can't comment. Leaders don't become for one day. Ukraine needs to change leadership culture. How do you grow it faster and more efficient is the question. And I would just say that the ambassador made a good point earlier about its experience. You can't. There's a song in the United States about the Green Berets. It says 100 men will test today, but only one earns a Green Beret. It's about being selective with experience. In our Army, it takes us 10 years to develop our first leader sergeant, 10 years. So how do you do it? I think you go to school. I think you look for examples inside Ukraine of people who are good leaders, great leaders, and you try to model them, try to hold them up in your press, in your studies, and support the good leaders. And then there's another question, person-based leaders with the extreme dark triad, narcissism, cynicism, to killing controls we can observe. How do we identify too much of the power given those who pervert like dictators? It's a good question. We have a colleague right now who is in Ukraine collecting the forensics of the war crimes. And when you all win, these people are going to be arrested, taken to court, and tried for what they're doing. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a quote that the ambassador and I like quite a bit that says, "The arc of humanity generally bends towards goodness." So thank God Hitler was eliminated and other dictators. And over time, we believe that the arc will swing back to goodness, but it will take time. And how many leaders is enough? Does anyone should be a leader? Well, I believe, and I'm going to turn to the ambassador to give his comments on these questions, but I believe that too many cooks can ruin the kitchen soup. But at the same time, I'd rather be in an organization filled with leaders than be in an organization filled with people who don't want to lead, don't care about leading, and are ambivalent. The point about having a lot of leaders is that everybody's got to understand where they fit inside the organization, but feel responsible for the organization. So thank you for your comments. Closing comments, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, General. I'll just pick up exactly what you just said and make just two comments. One is, I think it's really important for can anyone be a leader is how many leaders are enough. The concept of leadership is, like you said earlier in some of your earlier comments and questions, also involves followership. So being a leader also means that sometimes you step back and you follow somebody else because she has a better idea or she has a good idea or you like the idea that she has put forward, and so you follow her. So good leaders are also good followers. And in that sense, we go back to this word balance. There's a good balance there. In a good leadership environment, there are good leaders, followers, and there are good leaders who are leading, and the two things balance each other out. As far as that question on identifying too much power given to those who pervert, like dictators, General mentioned earlier this entire concept of the rule of law and the importance of the rule of law. And we, in our leadership studies, together take our groups often to the National Archives of the United States, where some of the founding documents of our nation, the key documents, founding documents of our nation are held, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And it is the commitment to these founding principles and the documents that put them onto paper that give us the grounding to answer that question, at least to a degree. You can never perfectly answer it. How do you identify those who are given power and those who pervert, like dictators? And we are struggling with that in our own country all the time as well. So it's not like we're above reproach in this issue. But the point is, we keep on coming back to the commitment to those founding principles. So when the general took his oath of office, and when I took my oath of office, we swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States and all the things that it stands for, not to a president, not to another higher level general, not to the Secretary of State, not to any individual, but to those principles. And I think if we as societies accept a common set of principles that guide us, then that'll be part of our decoding system for identifying those who have power and are seeking to pervert it. And you very well know, and I see that from the question, which is a very good question, there's a lot of that going around the world today, including in our country and many other places around the world. I think we're down to the last few seconds, General. I'll leave it over to you to close us out, and thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you all for joining us for our masterclass. We are honored to have been with you. We wish you peace and safety in Ukraine, and please let Arizona State University know how we can support you. Eugene, thank you so much for all your support today, and we look forward to joining with you at a future date. All the best to you all.
Bye-bye. All the best. Take care.